So for this tutorial, we're going to be creating this really cool animated transportation effect from Star Trek. It looks pretty cool. It's not as difficult as it looks, but we are going to be looking at some very cool geometry nodes. Okay, so for this this tutorial, you're going to need Blender 3.4 onwards. We've got 3.4.1. You're going to need 3.4 purely because of the geometry node options. They're not available in previous versions. Also, if you're struggling to see the text on this video, it's probably because YouTube has a habit of downgrading the quality on some of my videos. So have a look at your settings, just make sure it's set to HD. If it's set to HD, then you should be able to see this no problem at all. So let's go straight into this. And we've got our default cube, go to geometry node, hit the plus button, and let's zoom in, hit group input, delete that, and we're going to replace that with a cylinder. Straight away. And then we'll drop the cylinder into our geometry. And what we want to do is make this a little bit bigger, like so. Now what we want to do is a volume, mesh to volume node. So this is the 3.4 onwards additions. And then a distribute points in volume. You can see there that what it's doing is populating that area. Want to crank that up to something like 8, your computer will vary. So the more points you put in, the harder your computer will have to work. So just be careful with numbers like that. Now what we want to do is instance on points, because at the moment all we have are points. So we want to put something on these points. So as soon as you put instance on points in, everything vanishes. That's because there's nothing there. So you want to do an isosphere. If you can spell isosphere, and clamp that into your instances, and straight away it goes a bit crazy, but that's okay. Change your radius to 1, up your subdivisions. Again, this is computer related, so slower computers might struggle. This computer seems to be able to handle it, but just practice, and if it's slowing down, then maybe subdivisions 2, or maybe even 1. You don't necessarily have to have more. So this is just basically a volume of points. That's all very well and good, but we actually want something quite interesting in there. So let's put a monkey in, and we'll add a subdivider to the monkey. There she is, Suzanne. Shade smooth, and looking good so far. But that's all well and good, but whenever you watch Star Trek, it's never just around here. So we want to do something interesting. So let's grab Suzanne, drop her into here, and you'll get this group info node. Now, what we want to do now is proximity. We want these points nearest to Suzanne to be kind of visible, and the ones away from it to be invisible. So to kind of give you that illusion of your matter being materialized. So what we do is we'll clank that straight into geometry proximity, and as you can see straight away, it's had an effect. If you set that to relative and you grab Suzanne and move her around, you can see the effect that it has. So the volume field is varying depending on where Suzanne is, but obviously you've got this going on here. We don't really want that, so let's go to color ramp, plug that into there, and if I start playing with that, you can see it varies it, doesn't it? Look at that. That's all well and good. To add a little bit more control, let's move these over here, and we put a math node in. Very simple, and multiply add works quite nicely here. We have to bring this number down a little bit. There we go. It's one of these where it's a bit awkward, but it is doable. There we go. And just play around with the settings. That down to there until you're satisfied. That doesn't look too bad. It's kind of in that zone. But now what we want is we've got these orbs. We want them to be beam-like. So let's just move this stuff over here, and we want to replace, put a math node in. It's a lot easier to put the math node in first. Multiply. Yeah, it's multiply. So if I change that, we're just changing the size of the spheres there. It's not, which is all right, but not particularly great. what we want to do is we want to vary the directions. So we want Z to be different from X and Y. So to achieve that, we want a combine X, Y, Z. Plug that into there. And make sure the value goes into X and Y. You can see there that now we've got these little discs. That's because Z is set to 0. General rule, it's best to have this as a very low number. So 0.1, roughly. And you want this one to be slightly crazy, probably about 5. There we go. And just to make things look a little bit more interesting, let's set a set node, set material, even. Plug that in there. Go to the materials tab and create an emission. And of course you can vary this as much as you like. Let's make that 100. Back to your settings, make sure bloom is on, turn that one on. Oh, and don't forget to add your material. So now we've got this going on, which looks pretty good, but it is very static at the moment. So let's very quickly add something interesting to this. So we go to Graph Editor, and we'll insert a keyframe. Now make sure you've got your, it says cube. Let's change that. You know, let's change that. Transporter. There we go. So make sure you've got that selected. Make sure you've got your node selected. Go into here, add modifiers, add a modifier built-in function, and it replaces it with a sine wave. You can play with this. Let's make that small. It doesn't need to be that big. In fact, you know what? That's probably not too bad, actually. Oh, got and killed it. 2. It was less than that. 0.5. Probably less than that. 0.25. 0.2. Yay, there you go. Okay, so now we want to do is offset that. It's quite tall. And yeah, I tell you what, let's leave that. You can add more controls to this if you like. But if we go to timeline, hit the go button. You can see there it's going up and down. Of course, you can vary how this works. So let's click on that. Make that phase 0.1. You might want to make the amplitude a bit bigger. There we go. Looking good, looking good. Okay, so it's a good start. But obviously, when you watch Star Trek, it never just, you know, these transporters never just start off with, oh, everything all in one place. So what we want to do now is we want to add a bit of something interesting to it. So let's add a noise texture. And then let's add a mix node. Plant the 2 in there. Should get used to this. It always puts it there. There we go. Move that up to here. That down to there. Move the factor even into the lower one. And what we want to do, you can see there, if you have this factor to 1, it's all entirely noise. Whereas if you have factor to 0, then it's kind of this localized effect. But we want it to start as kind of 1, insert keyframe, and let's say somewhere over here it's 0. So if I was to do that, maybe let's go back to here, and then let's make that 1, so it's a little bit more. Insert keyframe, hit the go button, starts to focus in around your target. So that's looking pretty good. Obviously you can change a lot of these and just fine tune it, but as a starter, that's looking pretty good so far. Now another little trick that I like to use is, as good as that is, there's extra little things we can do to it. Let's just disconnect for a moment into there. Let's duplicate this line. Let's put that into there. So we're back to our good old standard. It's all just distributed points. And let's get rid of the cylinder. And instead let's replace it with a Suzanne. Let's bring Suzanne down here. What you can do is let's crank that up to 20. Let's make it even more. The higher that number, basically what we're doing now is taking Suzanne and we're populating her with all these points. In fact, if we hide Suzanne, you'll see that there are points within. So that's just another little extra trick that we're going to add. We want this noise tab. We want the control. Oh, let's I'm holding the shift button there. So shift, 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 and shift duplicate, and just put them into the scale. Do that there. Okay. Now, obviously, the annoying thing is that it's killed that from there. It's annoying, but okay. What I want to do is make this one a little bit bigger. So insert keyframe. I want to go back to press that, and we want combine the X, Y, Z. Let's do properties of Y. It's because we're looking there. There we go. So always make sure you're in the right settings. Timeline editor shows you where the points are. Graph editor gives you more control. So make sure you got that selected and you got the points selected. Add a modifier, another built-in, and we want to make this bigger. We'll put this somewhere up here. Let's make it 10. Let's put a bigger jump on it. Phase it down. We want to make that 0.1. Yeah, you know what point? 0.5. Yeah, go on. Again, play with this to your heart's content. There's a lot of options in here. And then we hit the go button again. Okay, let's press not that one. I want that one. Go back to here. Play around. There we go. That's a bit more like it. Now, obviously, we've subdivided all this. So let's put it all back together. And to do that, you just need a join. Join geometry. There you go. In you go. Looking good. Okay, so obviously this deals with just the transporter. So if you play this through to its completeness, let's move all this down here so you can see it all. Let that run for a second. Play around a bit more with those settings. So it slowly zooms in. And your materialization effect. But obviously it's all very lit up from the start. So one last trick we're going to do is we're going to go into shading. And in this emissions tab, we're going to make it a bit more interesting. Let's add a transparency into there, a mix node into here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a keyframe again, make sure that's connected, and actually let's use this one here. Timeline editor, let's just drag this along here. So obviously when it's 50-50, it's a bit of both. We want it to be fully 1 to start with, and then go to 0 and then drop off again. So to achieve that, we're going to go into here, shader value, there you go, a modifier, again, built-in function, sine wave works just nicely. Phase it 0.01, nice and small, maybe 0.15 actually. There we go. Offset slightly. Oh, not that way. I want to go that way. 3. Sure that is set to 1. Actually, it needs to be the other way around. There we go. So it starts off 0. And then what we're going to do, let's just check this, timeline it on, just to... In fact, let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's make this a little bit more interesting, shall we? Insert a keyframe. And we want to go into here, graph editor. Same deal again. Make sure all that's connected. You're up here somewhere, aren't you? There you go. Add a modifier, built-in function. We do want that to be... We want that to be small, maybe 0.015 again, but phase offset, let's Actually, I tell you what, let's just see what happens. So you don't just want it all to appear at the same time. This is a bit of an experiment, this one. It seemed to ramp up quite quickly, didn't it? Okay. Okay. Again, these are things you can play with. But what we want to do is have it nicely appear. So let's just go into our materials. One alpha clip. Is it alpha blend? I think it's alpha blend is better. There you go. Makes that disappear in EV mode. Your bloom's on. Let's go back to our main screen. Let's turn on that and hit the go button. Why are we not seeing any emissions? Is it because the computer isn't catching up? There we go. Yeah, it is a problem with the computer, actually, that one. So it is working. What we'll do is I think we'll just render that and just see what's happening. And obviously, for the last bit, we just need to, let's hide that. Let's do something interesting with Suzanne in these last few minutes. That is, go back to shading. Not sure why it's doing that. That's a bit weird. Notes. Why are we not seeing the node layout for Suzanne? There we go. Must have clipped that. Okie dokie. Let's add a bit of material to her. And then what we want to do is we want to do the same as before. We want to mix shader, put it in the middle, that down there, transparent. And this is where things, again, can take a little bit of time just to set up. It's alpha clipped. Just make sure that works. There we go. So soon to there. So that is turned back on the transporter. And it's going to be somewhere about here. We want insert keyframe. And then make it 1. Insert keyframe again. Okay, so if we put the whole thing on, it should change the background, shall we, into black. Yeah, it's a bit strange that, because emission is on, it should be running. Why are we not? Why are we losing our emissions? Let's move that back to about here, shall we? You almost want it to appear. In fact, you know what? Let's have a quick play. Let's see. If I was to put a Fresnel in as well. Can't find it. That's because I'm not typing the right thing. Okay, and let's put that into true value there. And emission. There and into here. Let's hide that. Let's just add a little bit of interest to it. It's multipliers, isn't it? That's why. There we go. So just to add a little bit of an effect to it. Let's turn that up. Make it 50. 500 works quite nice, actually. Turn all that on. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay, and then mix shader. Oh no, we don't want a mix shader. Plug that in there. Plug it into here. Down into there. Up into here. And again, it's one of those where we just need to bingo the timing a bit. Let's add a keyframe. Add a keyframe. You run that through then. There we go. Might need to play with the settings a little bit on it, but ultimately that's starting to take form. So yeah, let's take this away and let's have a play with some of the numbers and yeah, see what we get out of it. Okay, so after a bit of fine-tuning, we can end up with an effect very much like this. And it literally is just fine-tuning some numbers. I have only modified one or two little areas which didn't cover in the tutorial, and that was to include this kind of spinning effect and this additional glow. But when we add this to a scene like this, we can get a really cool effect, and there's nothing really very special here. This is all just very much editing of cylinders and adding glow and adding a bit of texture here and there. And if people want a tutorial on how this scene was actually built, then let me know and I'll put something together. But really, there's nothing particularly difficult or special about this scene at all. So let's just have a quick look at the geometry node. So let's go back into our scene here. And if we click onto the effect, let's just have a look at what we've done. So as I say, literally nothing different with the exception of adding this transform node here. And as you can see, what I've done is I've added a bit of spin to it. So as the animation continues, you can see that rotation is changing. That's what gives this spin effect. Also, to achieve the kind of glowing field around the cylinder, all you have to do is really just grab a node off your original cylinder, drag it to a set node, add it to the join geometry, and it literally creates that. In fact, let's just see if we can separate this. Oops, start breaking stuff here. Oh, let's break stuff. There you go. And that's literally it. That's how it looks. It's just a very simple field effect. Let's go into the shaders, just have a look at that field and turn on our scene, and that's literally it. It's again nothing very special. There we go. And we've got a special little animation code there in the mixer shader. It goes from transparent to this effect here, this gradient effect. Again, nothing very special, just adds that little bit of detail. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. So if you've enjoyed this, then I hope you give it a like, and if you're not subscribed, then I hope you're inspired to subscribe to the channel after this. I'm working on something pretty big, so hopefully that's going to come in the next couple of weeks. But until then, yeah, any problems, give me a shout in the comments below and I'll try and help as best I can. Thank you very much.